Contemplation. Sorry. Why don't you stop now? Okay, let's just do the 4 limitless contemplation. May all beings have happiness and create the causes of happiness. May they all be free from suffering and creating the causes of suffering. May they find that noble happiness, which can never be tainted by suffering. May they attain universal impartial compassion, free of worldly bias towards friends and enemies. Semchen damje dewatang dewe jutang din bajutik, dungal tang dungal chichutang trawajutik, dungal mepe dewa tampatang mindrawajutik, nearing chaktang nitang trawe tang nung chempolane pajutik. So good evening, everybody. Coming in dribs and drabs, the group, but never mind. As long as you all get here in the end, with load shedding and all the other terrible things that we're having in our poor country. So tonight we're going to do part 3 of human relationships, dependent or transcendent. Now, I really want you to butt in, because I really find that this stuff is important that you get, especially when I go onto the transcendent relations. I'm not in a hurry, because to really understand transcendent relationships, and I'll explain to you exactly what happens in Buddhist weddings, which is where in Buddhist weddings you asked to do transcendent relationship with the person you marry. But I think what's very important about all these relationships is also that we're not only doing a love relationship, because when we think of relationships, we immediately think of someone we're in love with or something like that. But there's so many relationships. I mean, there's so many things and so many factors that come together that actually what is given in the marriage story, the Buddhist marriage story, is really, really very good for ordinary relationships as well, where whatever element that is predominant in you, you are able to see the element in the other person. And then you are able to complement them with enlightened activity. So let's start with this lovely little story. It's called The Task Gets Between Us. Okay, the way we lose each other can be very simple. One of my patients, is Rachel Remer, describes how he spent time with his son prior to his diagnosis of cancer. We would hike a mountain, a difficult climb, side by side, both focused on reaching the top. Then we would come down a different way, one behind the other, to the car and drive home. We did this many times. In thinking back, I have a clear memory of many of these climbs, but no memory of anything my son said to me or I said to him. In child psychology, what this man is describing is called parallel play. And a parallel play is normal for children between the age of 2 and 3. And at this age, children use the same sandbox. You've seen them even at nursery school. They use the same sandbox and even the same toys, but they're playing alone, next to each other, not with each other. Rather than relate to each other, they relate to a common activity which they do in parallel. My patient makes a great contrast between this and the way he and his son relate now. I can't do much just now. So we sit and talk. I ask him about his life and how he feels about it. For the first time, I know what is important to him. I really know what sort of a man he is and what keeps him going. And I talk to him too. We talk to each other. I know now that I'm important to him, that he wants to spend time with me. And not just because we do physical things together. Sometimes we just sit together being alive. The mountain got between us before, and I had not known that. many people, she says, live their lives in this way, sharing homes, sharing jobs, and even families with others, but not connecting. Such an important thing. It is possible to be lonely in the midst of a family, in the midst of a whole gathering. You can feel very, very lonely. And in your own home. And too often, she says, medicine is practiced in this way. Side by side, patient and physician focus on the disease, the symptoms, the treatments, never seeing or knowing each other. The problem gets in the way, and we are each alone. Now, this, I feel, is a very important story, and I feel it's a very important story, especially for your working relationships, because a lot of people, they come in, they do the work, they relate to the people at work, and that's about as far as the relationship goes. They don't notice if somebody comes in and is looking very sad on a particular occasion, or somebody comes in and they're really not, you can see they haven't got it together today, etc., etc. Now, this is so important. The connection in your relationships. Sometimes you can go through many years with a person and be very lonely in that relationship. And the thing is, if that starts happening, you have to look internally at what is it? What is it that I am doing that causes this person to be totally disconnected from me? It's really a very important thing, this whole thing, because connection, when you really, when you have a connection with somebody, you have a complete compassion and understanding. Even if they're irritating you, you have a complete compassion and understanding. And in the story, it's a very important story, because you just watch people at work. Lots of people never come in, bosses never see how their people are. It's uncanny. I mean, and when we look at the elements tonight, I want you to see how it's possible by using enlightened activities to open the way for you to be able to connect with people. So we were talking, I'm just going to give you 2 minutes literally on what we were talking about last time. But we were talking about, I don't know if you remember me telling you about James Lowe's story, where he said Guru Rinpoche had all these facets of himself, and they could all come together because they were all made of the same nature. And we have to understand that our major nature is an awakened nature. How we see ourselves now, how we experience ourselves, is just complete and total perversion, you could call it. Perversion, you could call it coarseness, you could call it we can't see the world and people as they really are. We can't see them in any way or any form. And so we were talking about how Guru Rinpoche, when he shows all his manifestations, he's able to put them together in a central Buddha nature, where we are not able to do that. We've got this part that goes to work. We've got this part that does this. We've got that part that does that. We've got this part that's a mother, and this part, and they're all different, and they all never come together because of one major thing. That when you look at yourself and how you are in the world, you are seeing yourself as an ego, as the 5 skandhas, which we'll talk about in a moment, how they are perversion. We see ourselves, I see myself as Melanie, you see yourself as Jade, or Viam, or Sean, or Pam, or whoever it is, you see yourself like that. And that ego is always a limited value, because the ego is too busy protecting itself. And that was one of the reasons why the Buddha taught how important it is to actually realize that you are so much more than the ego that you present to the world. And it's really important. And we were talking about the three modes of existence that he talked about in samsara being anicca, impermanence, anatta, selflessness, we don't have a self, and dukkha, which is suffering. Okay, but suffering is not only when you're going through pain and illness and all the terrible things. Suffering is when you're having a joyous time and you think it's going to last forever. And then when it's impermanent, we get completely hysterical because now it's all gone. So what we're looking at is really, that everything is really impermanent. And we were talking about the dependent relationship, which is a relationship based on causes and conditions, which is how you are to me, how I am to you. And it's quite important because in the Buddhist marriages, which I'm going to talk a little bit more about, because I think it's really a very important part of everything. But in the Buddhist marriages, I just want to find this thing that I'm looking for. I've got so many notes here. I just want to see where wait a minute. I think I know where it is. In the Buddhist marriages, we're looking at how the elements are able to complement and balance each other. But obviously, if we are looking at the coarse elements, as Dzongkar Khyentse Rinpoche says, this body is the result of all our attachments to coarseness. We wouldn't have this body if we weren't attached to the coarse elements. And this is the result of it. And in the Buddhist marriage, what you're trying to do is you're saying that each of the elements has many layers of meaning within ourselves, within a relationship, within the world at large, at an emotional and psychological level, and at a spiritual level. And it's really important that we actually understand that these things, this is the way it happens when we look at the world in a perverted way, which is really important. Because what we do in a Buddhist wedding is you use the 5 scarves representing the 5 elements. Everything's in 5s, and we're going to go through it in a minute. We do the 5 scarves and how in each of these elements you need to balance the relationship. So if you look at the fire element can lead to burning the fabric of another person, because the fire element is strong and it burns, and you have to learn to balance it. But if you have no fire in the relationship, then there can be no passion. You can be a very indifferent kind of person. You can be a very spaced out kind of person. So you need a balance of each of the elements. If you take water, when you look at the couple marrying, when you take water, water can be used to soothe and cool. But water can also be used to ice you over and put on a real intellectual cold, iced way. Now think about it. The element space can be somebody who gives you total space in a relationship, or it can be somebody who's so spaced out that they don't really care what you do. So it's a fine balance of what you do with the elements in relationships. It's really a very, very important thing. So tonight, I want to look at first of all how we go to a transcendent relationship. It's really very difficult in the beginning to understand that the actual frozen physical body really as it is in function. That's why last time I showed you the frozen elements and the running pure, working elements. So when we look at the physical body as it really functions in samsara, it's just this is a coarse version of our of our awakened nature. And every single part of the coarse, frozen version of who we think we are is just a perversion of what we truly are. Now, you can stop me at any point. I'm very happy if you ask questions, but everything in our habitual samsaric life is just eons of conditioning, habitual momentums, on and on and on. These habitual momentums are what we've got of what we really, really believe. And we could wake up with one light switch, as quick as a light switch. And then what do we see? Then it's a completely different story. So go back to what I keep repeating in both talks yesterday as well, of what the Buddha said to Shariputra when he asked why. Shariputra said, but I don't understand, beautiful awakened being. Why is the world so full of impurity when you're in it? So the Buddha answered, he said, the thus come one, the Buddha's called the thus come one. It's a lovely name. He says, the thus come one is not to blame, Shariputra. This land of mine, because my nature is Buddha, is a pure land, but you fail to see the pure land. Now, I'm always think of the story of the Karmapa. Once when the 16th Karmapa was walking along a street and there was a butchery with all these bloody animals hanging down and all their blood. And on top of the butchery, standing on a board, was a woman dripping with blood with two knives in her hand. I love this story. And what happened was all the monks went, oh, they were all vegetarian. Oh, look at that. And the next thing is their beautiful leader went in and they watched this ceremony that this being with the bloodied knives put the knife onto the Karmapa and gave him the most incredible blessing. Now, what was that about? They could only see the bloody butchery with all the meat hanging. He could see that it wasn't really like that. He was looking with a completely different view. So he saw Vajrayogini standing on the board with a knife, ready to give him the empowerment. And they all missed it. Okay, now think of the world, because I often think of the world, the wars, the hatred, the anger. Is it really like that? Or is it just the way we perceive it together with our very long habit conditioning? And what's the meaning of this? The meaning is our land is called Saha, meaning that which must be endured. That's what it's called. And it's very special because I think I told this group as well, because our land or our earth is actually on the 13th level of Varashana, on the level of his heart. So it's a very, very, very special thing, because out of 25 world systems, our world system is on the level of his heart, which is his mind, which means that our world system has the potential for all this purity and all these amazing things. And it means it corresponds to the mind, the awakened mind of Buddha, which has 5 purities. What are the 5 purities? Pure mind, pure body or Vajra body, Vajra speech, Vajra mind, Vajra qualities, and Vajra enlightened activities. So body, speech, and mind of purity, qualities that are pure. If we awakened our Buddha nature, the qualities would all be there. And fifthly, the enlightened activities. Now, when I start talking about the transcendent relationship, When you look at the enlightened activities put together with the elements, it's the most amazing, amazing thing, because then you begin to realize the difference between our unenlightened activities. Like if you say something to me that is offensive, I'm directly hitting you back with my ego. But an enlightened activity, you have a completely different view. Because if somebody is standing in front of you that's really quite difficult, you know that this is just a reflection of your mind teaching you what you need to do. And we can't see the pure land of Buddha Shakyamuni created because we only know the coarse side of ourselves, which is made with coarse elements. We have the ability within to recognize this, but all our self-created obscurations, our habits, our poisons, all the negative emotions, our conditioning, block us from viewing this. So if we spend our time clearing this, we will be able to see the purity of this pure land, not its coarse form filled with impurities. Now, I decided when I was in India once, I decided that I am going to start to train my mind to see this world in a different way. Well, I can tell you something, it's really hard to train. Why? Because the habits just come back. The coarseness just comes back. All the things that we're so used to doing just come back to us. We can't see beyond it. But I decided I don't want to just see the coarse elements anymore. I want to see the elements in their absolutely pure form and ponder this and think how this would affect our relationships. Because as soon as you're in that state, your relationship is going to change completely, because actually you're quite grateful for a difficult relationship, because this is bringing out the awakened stuff inside you. If you don't fall for it every time, if you don't do it again and again and again in your old habit. So before I go on to show you how the course elements actually operate, maybe somebody wants to say something or ask something with pleasure. If you can put on your cameras, you guys, it really is nice, but I know there is load shedding today. Anyone want to ask anything or say anything? With pleasure, make your comments, because this is the time. If you don't get out of you, yes, Viam.
Something that you I don't think directly talking about, but alluded to, that thing of, eons of conditioning, in this way. That's why we're seeing ourselves the way that we're seeing ourselves in these forms, are these bodies with these, like, I have to eat, all these things that goes together with being in this human form. And it made me think of this a little bit of a talk that I saw, that Zongzar Kiense and someone that asked him about kind of something along the lines of, where was the initial, how did the ignorance come about? Where does it come from? Like, like how does it really work? If samsara and nirvana is intertwined, where does it come from? If everything is actually the pure view, what I'm saying? But he has said something about, I didn't quite understand exactly. We didn't talk a lot about it, but it was something about, that guy that asks it doesn't really understand emptiness as such, or something along those lines, or what it actually means. But like, I guess having this limited perception, that's something that I sometimes wonder about. I don't know if you kind of get what I'm asking.
I get exactly what you're asking. It's such an interesting question. And you should try and get, there were one or two people here that were here yesterday, because I was talking a lot about this in my talk yesterday of Jigme Limpa's aspirational prayer. But you see, what is very important is you just have to look at how religions have taken the story of Adam and Eve wandering out from the Garden of Eden. Now, don't think of it literally as two people wandering out naked into the world and now they are banished. Then they say God banished them from the Garden of Eden. What is the real significance of that? The significance of it is that as soon as you get the idea of an I, that's why the Buddha taught this, and I'm coming to this now. As soon as you get the idea of an I, me, and this is who I am, you already taking yourself into duality, away from the abundance, the pure lands. That's why they describe the Garden of Eden. Every fruit you want, everything you want, all the things you want are all in the Garden of Eden. But Adam and Eve got banished. Why did they get banished? The essence is when we started to think of an I, then we needed to protect this I. We banished ourselves from the abundance, from the pure land, from everything that we had in abundance. And they get that right in the biblical interpretation, as a symbolic story. So it's when we start believing, and yesterday I was talking about unawareness. I mean, in the ground, there is awareness and unawareness. Both of them exist. Both of them come out of the ground. What we use, if we fail to recognize that everything that comes out of the ground must be pure on the basis that it comes from a pure base, as soon as we recognize it, we're on the path to awareness. As soon as we fail to see it and we see ourselves as separate and someone else as separate, we're on the path to unawareness. And the whole world, when you look at our world, they're actually living in unawareness. And that unawareness comes out of the ground, but we don't know it because we've got to open our eyes and really, really start to see the truth about ourselves. Let me just go on a little bit, and then maybe this will help, and then let's talk about it. We think we are such and such a person. My name's Melanie. I'm such a person. This is where I come from. And I come from such and such an earthly family. That's my earthly family. Our bodies and everything in our environment are made up of the coarse 5 elements: water, fire, air, and space. That's what we're made of. Now we think who we are is compiled of the 5 aggregates or the 5 skandhas. That's who we think we are. And what are the 5 skandhas? That was one of the early teachings the Buddha taught. He said, they don't really exist. So what do we think we are of the 5 skandhas? Form. Oh boy, this world thinks of the physical body as everything. You just got to look at the adverts. You got to look at it. The physical body, if it's slim and beautiful, if you can put Botox, if you can, whatever you do, we think we are our bodies. Okay. Secondly, our feelings. The second skandha, our feelings. Our feelings are anger, hatred. We also have nice feelings, happy feelings. We think we are our feelings, but our feelings are just empty. They're nothing. If we allowed them to dissolve, they would absolutely dissolve. Our feelings would absolutely dissolve. So form, feelings, perceptions. What are perceptions? How we perceive the world, which is based on how our families of origin conditioned us to see things. I remember my father telling me, Melanie, when you live in this world, you never take a pin that doesn't belong to you. I mean, then you have a perception of anybody that takes things is a bad person immediately. We have all our perceptions, which we believe to be true, but they are no thing. They're just based on all our conditioning and our training. Okay, so that's our perception. Those perceptions then become our habits. Now, for 1 minute, think about your habits. Your habits to push people away, your habits to eat too much, your habits to see people as a threat, your habits going on and on and on. Your habits are formed out of your perceptions. That's point number 4. And point number 5 is your consciousness. And how is the perverted consciousness? 5 sense consciousnesses: eyes, ears, smell, smell, touch, and what did I leave out? Whichever one I left out. Okay, the 5 sense consciousnesses. Okay, and those 5 sense consciousnesses are what we see, what we hear, what we taste, what we feel in the world, but they are actually nothing. So 5 sense consciousness, 1 mind consciousness, which says this is a person, this is a bottle, this is a this, that labels everything. Number 6 is our klesha consciousness. Number 7 is our klesha consciousness, which is all the negativities. I see that tree and I like it. That's your klesha consciousness. Or I see that person, she's gorgeous, I want to. I see that person, he's awful, I don't want him anywhere in my space. Those are the consciousnesses. And finally, the alaya consciousness, which is where all our imprints are. So that consciousness, that all those 5 skandhas, form, feelings, perceptions, habits, and consciousness, are all coarse perversions, delusions. They do not exist as we expect them. And then, to add to that, we have 5 main conflicting habitual emotions. We have ignorance or delusion, where we make up all the stories, and ignorance is the beginning of the wheel of life. We have anger, aggression, all the things that go with anger. We have pride. I'm better than you. You better not treat me like this. We have attachment and the passions. And we have envy and jealousy. From those 5 negative poisons come 184,000 negative qualities, negative emotions. And this is who we think we are. This is who we think we are. Now think about it, because I'm challenging you. The Buddha challenged this. And when you die, all these things die with you. Everything, when you die, all these aspects die. What are you left with? If people, I was talking to somebody today, and this guy doesn't want, he's dying, but doesn't want to talk about death, doesn't want to talk about anything, because if you have no clue about what it's like to die, about what it's like to give all of this up and all our attachments up, if you see that, you really have to know that we are so much more. And at death, we have a chance to recognize this. But it's so important to know that all those things dissolve. And this is all part of why we can't see the place that Buddha Shakyamuni inhabited is a pure land. We can't see it. Therefore, everything that we see is impure. And how, I'm going to leave this open now, how do we get to see the pure version of these impurities? And I'm going to go through each of the elements. I don't care if we don't finish tonight, we can finish next time. But one, when we want to see the pure version, number 1, we have to realize that what we perceive is not the truth. That's point number 1. Point number 2, we clear all these perversions through the different practices that we've been left, like Vajrasattva, clearing the 100 aspects that we have in us. Through these practices that we've been given, we clear all these perversions. And 3, we retrain ourselves to view purity. Now, I used to sit at the top of the mountain, the Himalayas in India, and I used to just look in the sky, because Taisitu Rinpoche had introduced me to the fact of how the pure world looks, how it really looks. So I wanted to see it. It's jolly difficult because of your habit of how you see things. But what happened was, eventually I started to see colors arise in the sky, and what we call Vajra chains. Vajra chains, I saw them straight away. They're these little squiggly things, which is your awareness in front of you. And you start to see them. Then as I went further on the journey, I could see them many millions of them. In the beginning, I could just see a few squiggles. That's your awareness in front of you. That's what you're going to see when you come to death. Now, I just want to read you one thing, and then I'm throwing it open for discussion. The union of the sun and moon tantra. What the union of the sun and moon tantra says. Listen carefully, because this is a description of the purity. At the time that space dissolves into clear light after dissolution. So when you're looking and space is dissolving into the clear light, the entire field of experience shines as a mandala of 5-colored rainbow light. Okay? Then the inanimate external objects will fade, like the mountains, the forests, all the things that you normally see will just fade, okay? And then wherever we look, it will appear as if a bolt of colorful brocade were thrown open, vivid, variegated, dazzling color, trembling, quaking. And then the visions of the 5 Buddha families, of the 5 wisdoms start appearing. Now that's a description from a beautiful thing. And I remember when I started to see those colors, the first time I saw the colors properly, I didn't know what to do with myself. I was actually running around the retreat room because I didn't quite know what to do with myself, because I'd never seen colors like this in my whole life. I'd never seen anything like these colors. And they were awesome. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't look anymore. I couldn't do anything. They were so beautiful. So what they're saying is that as soon as the dissolving of all the physical things that you normally see, the coarse things, a whole brocade of variegated colored light comes up. And then that colored light starts developing into the families. And I want to teach you what these families are, 5 ways of looking at reality. Because when I'm finished teaching you, then I want to teach you what it's like in a relationship. So it's like really important. Does anyone want to say anything? Eugene, you look like you're on the edge of your chair now. Do you want to say anything? Anybody, or ask anything?
Mel, if I can come in.
Please.
I'm going to ask the question that I keep on asking, and it's the one thing that bothers me a little around all of this, is if we are, and all the masters keep saying, you are a Buddha, you just don't realize that you are a Buddha. Now, I still can't understand why, if that is our natural essence, our natural innate essence, why on earth did we ever part from that? What was it? And it's the same sort of question you were mentioning earlier. It's, if that is us, if it's something that, and so many of them say it can happen like lighting a candle in a huge cavern, the moment you light it, that you realize. But why on earth, if that is our, if we are limitless, if that is our innate essence, why would we ever have parted? Because there is no self, according to these teachings. There is no self.
No.
Why would we have suddenly recognized a self? That's what I don't quite understand.
Okay,
I hope
but
I'm.
you know, it's such an interesting thing because I got this text from somebody in my other group, and she said exactly that to me. She said, Melanie, I don't understand the point of unawareness. She said, why would we choose unawareness, which is exactly what you're saying? I don't understand. Why didn't we just stay in the light and stay where we were with everything so beautiful? And you know, there's an interesting, I wrote to her, I mean, I did an audio message back to her, which she was very excited about afterwards. And I said to her, you know what? If this was a beautiful world and we were all Buddhas walking around and we never experienced anything else, what would the world be like? Okay, it's kind of like I said in that story. We would not know. We would not actually know that what we were doing was very lovely. Like in that lovely story, it said, when the whole world was in an enlightened age, people helped each other. People were kind to each other. People had amazing relationships with each other, and they made no history. Now think about it. You put on the television, and the history is whatever sensational, whatever anybody did that was wrong. They made no history. So in order really to be able to appreciate, like I can appreciate the seeing of the purity because of so many eons of seeing impurity. But it's kind of, you have to get to a point where you can actually, I'm coming to you now, Eugene, where you can actually see that going astray is actually amazing, because then it motivates you to really come back, and you start with causes and conditions, and then you come back to be who you are. So it's a very, very interesting thing, because if we just stayed there, nobody would even know that they
But the
were
thing
doing.
is, Mel, that what doesn't make sense for me there is Buddha, being a Buddha, you're beyond time, you're beyond making history, you're beyond all of that.
But
You are we can't even conceive of what that
but how many beings recognized they were a Buddha and stayed being a Buddha? All of them strayed. I mean, if you take Buddha,
that's what I don't understand, Mel. That's what I don't understand. If you are that pure wisdom and clarity and limitless, I mean, we can't even conceive in our current form that. Why on earth? Where would the obscuration come from? This is it's like a paradox. You can't explain.
If you were pure and you looked into all the universes and all the worlds, and you saw all the people who couldn't see and who couldn't hear and who had taken themselves out, your first thing would be to go out into those worlds and help those people. It's like a natural thing. And in order to help those people, you would need to be like them. And you now watch with these masters, some of them come, they are the most exquisite beings, and they kind of, in a way, go wrong, if you know what I mean. They are these exquisite beings that have had
they go wrong. Yes, you're right. Yeah,
wrong in inverted commas. Do we really know if it's wrong? I mean, do we know? I mean, Chogyam Trungpa, you should hear Dzongsa talking about him. He says he was the most unbelievable being. And it's so interesting because Ekon Rinpoche said he wasted his life. Lama Yeshe Rinpoche said he did the most incredible things. Okay. Yeah. Do we know? We have to go.
No, we can't judge in that way because you don't know what they're trying to do, what they're trying to evoke in other people and things like that. You can't.
To explore, there's no doubt about it, and we have to go for the sake of all beings. We have to do that. Eugene, you wanted to say something. Go on.
Sorry, just had to find the mute button. But like, isn't it also your impelling consciousness that create you in your current form? Yes. So that's so So you get born into the form that you're attracted to from a karmic perspective. But I sent you that article, and the more I think about it, the more I think it has a big impact, because there's research that they've been doing in neuroscience on epilepsy people, where they wanted to split the left and the right brain so that the people don't get the epileptic fits. So, but what happened was that actually the left brain interprets the stimulus from the right brain and creates a story, and that story is the self that we formulate for ourselves. And I listened to Oprah podcast.
Yeah, I
where,
saw Oprah's thing. With
yeah, where that woman, her left brain got damaged, so she actually couldn't make up the stories anymore. So she was very much pretty logical and being in the moment, and in a perpetual state of mindfulness and being present.
Okay.
So that was kind of cool. But I think we believe the story so much because when you're young, you're already perceiving that mom is hugging me, mom is ignoring me. I'm getting a bottle of milk, I'm happy. I'm not getting a bottle of milk, I'm not happy. So it's from that very first stimulus when they smack your butt as you get out of your mom. So I think and that's our perception, and I think that's just like from a physical or neuroscience point of view, how we create a self. But I think it's designed that way because I think we have to overcome our karma. We need this play space to overcome your karma and play it out. And
you do, but yet, you see,
yeah, you can immediately go into the void and reach your pure primordial wisdom and all of that kind of stuff, and you can do it at the blink of an eye. But at the end of the day, you're still going to be, for most of us, you can realize it, but you'll still be trapped in your physical body.
well,
But I
yeah,
think there are people, and this is where it gets interesting for me. There are people who realize that wisdom and totally drop this existence completely, and they just go straight into the light and into the rainbow body.
yeah.
And that's what Jesus did when he ascended. And that's what, like, if you really talk, and that this is where the intersectionality of things becomes very interesting, where people just went into the pure light, and that's where the halo comes from in Islam, in Christianity, in all kinds of stuff, because those were beings that they just ascended. So they completely dropped this. They say, this is all illusion. Up, beam me up, Scotty. And they're done. So, but like, see, our attachment then kicks in. It's like, what about this body? What about my family? What about my commitments? What about the I? I'm so good at this. So then all those things happen.
Of course they happen, and that's the whole point. That, do you have to go and be in a cave and do retreat for the rest of your life in order to attain this? No, you don't. Some people do, and they go and they do it, but some people don't. But Mart, you wanted to bring up something, please.
Yeah, I think it's two sides here of the coin, what we are talking about, because the initial question, I think, from Fiona was, if the natural state is Buddha nature, how did we lose it? And obviously Eugene is talking about that you can regain it in a moment, or not in a moment, and why we're actually not achieving it. And I think the first question, I mean, the more I read about it and think about it, is there's actually the difficulty of, number one, is we're talking about something in theory which we haven't experienced. So how can I answer the question, how did I lose my Buddha nature if I have never been in touch with it? I mean, and I may or may not. So that's the first thing. And I think the Buddha also at some stage said it's idle talk. It's not even, is it actually relevant? Because both nirvana and samsara is made out of the same stuff, right? So call it samsara, or an I arose and now we are in the I game and this and the other. But is it really so relevant where this all comes from, or is it more relevant really to focus on and think of, okay, so the Buddha and all the other enlightened beings we've met, they're an example of, yes, we can get back to that. And how can we get back to it? Not how did we lose it, because I don't think it's a question we can answer in our current state.
I hear exactly what you're saying, but it's quite an interesting thing, because what Jigme Lingpa says in his aspirational prayer, which is quite important, he says that if you want to have wisdom, you need knowledge of your unawareness. So it's quite interesting. He's, that you need to know where you went wrong and what you did. Because if it's been going on for a very long time, you really do need to have some understanding of where you went wrong. But let's not debate that, because what you're doing, let me just give you a tiny bit and then we'll do a meditation. We are not conditioned. So I said, if you want to start seeing a pure world, you've got to realize what we perceive is not the truth. You've got to clear some of the obscurations which Mark you'd have to know about, and we have to retrain ourselves to view purity. So we are not conditioned to think of the awakened elemental state as 5 Buddha families. So let's look at it, not 5 Buddha families, because when people think of a Buddha, they think of the statue. They think of a little statue. The statue is just to symbolize the awakened being. You don't need to ever see a statue again. But what is the meaning of the 5 Buddha families? Okay, it's 5 ways of viewing reality in a pure way, or 5 wisdoms, or 5 modes of awareness. You could call them anything, or 5 Buddha families. But these 5 ways are right inside our heart, in something that they call in Tibetan Tigla Nachik, which means the mandala of your heart. That's really your mind in Buddhism. That's your heart. Inside there, you've got these 5 ways of looking at reality based on the 5 pure elements, okay? And when you understand that, for a lot of people, they think the idea of 5 Buddha families inside us, they don't know what it really means. Buddha just means awakened one. So it's 5 ways of looking at reality. And think about this. I just gave you the 5 skandhas, the 5 perversions. Everything is in 5, because when you die, all those 5 dissolve, and then you're left with the 5 ways of reality. So let's say you couldn't see them while you were alive. As soon as you go through the first bardo in death, you come to the bardo of Dharmata. And there, in front of your eyes, are these 5 ways of looking at reality with the most beautiful colored lights. And if you understand this, there's no way you can miss this when you die. There's no way any of you should miss this, because I've cultivated this all my life. I know what it looks for and what to look for. And what they explain to you is that if you can recognize, recognize, know that what you're seeing is you, the real you, not Melanie, not Fiona, not Jade, but the real you. As soon as you recognize that, you're through. You're into a liberated form of some description or another. So it's like an insurance policy, really understanding what it is. There are 5 different ways to view this reality, or 5 wisdom, and they all blend into these exquisite colors, because each element, each family has got a color. Each family or each wisdom has got an enlightened activity. And what I've done in my life is I've taken these 5 ways of knowing reality, and I do them over and over again, so that I can do them like the back of my hand, so that every day I will say the mantra, I will say what it is, I will give the perversion. I do it all the time when I'm in the shower, wherever I am, so that those 5 ways of reality are very clear, apart from trying to train to see what they really look like. But they all blend together in a beautiful way. But to know and become aware of each way of reality is truly amazing. Why? Number 1, because we then view this pure world as it really is. Number 2, it gives us a transcendent way of viewing all our relationships, which makes us very joyful, and the people we have to relate to are also joyful and very satisfied, because we could see them as a balance between them and us, instead of seeing, you're not giving me what I want, you aren't doing what I want, you doing this, you hurting me, I'm going to sue you in the divorce courts, I'm going to do this to you, why is this child going their own way and not listening to what I taught them, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so if we look at these 5 Buddha families, or these 5 wisdoms, or these 5 modes of awareness, they have specific features, and each of us belong very clearly to one of these ways of reality. It doesn't matter, it doesn't mean we don't have the others, we do, but one is very connected to us. Like for me, it didn't take me long to know which family I was connected to. Now, when you look at the zodiacal elemental sign that you are born under, often that may not be the same as the family to which you, or the wisdom to which you really have an affinity. Usually that happens much later on, so that if you're born under, I know that the family I relate to the most is the Lotus family, which is a fire family. And I'm born under Sagittarius, which is a fire sign. So the fire is there. There's absolutely no doubt in my mind. And I have to learn to balance it and use the enlightened activity of the Lotus family. So each one has all these characteristics. And what I've done over the years is really begin to understand them, so that I can see the world in a different way. And when we examine that specific family, it shows us the pure way to be, instead of the aggregates, instead of the negative emotions, instead of the coarse element. But we have to work a long time and with deep commitment until we get it. So let's do one family, and then we'll do the others next time. Let's do one family, and then let's do a meditation, and you can ask me whatever you want to do. Okay, so when we have the Buddhist marriages, we actually looking at which wisdom you really have an affinity with, and putting them all together. And let's briefly examine the features of each way of reality and their enlightened activity, and their, rather than the personality perversion. So we'll start off with the element earth, because that's the base of everything, the element earth. Okay. The family, the earth family, or the earth way of viewing reality is called the Ratna family. Ratna means a jewel. It's called the jewel-like family. The color associated with this earth element is yellow. Now, it's very interesting because you'll find that if there is a family you can align yourself with, that'll also be a color you're very comfortable with. So the earth color is yellow. And then you have a male and a female Buddha in each of these, but that is not important. There's nothing in a name. It's just that when you are working with that family, it's nice to think of the male Buddha and the female Buddha, and then they have all these entourages. Now, when you look at it, it's very, very interesting because the male Buddha and the female Buddha, as I gave you in that chart last time, but we won't go back to the chart. We'll just go back to the actual thing. But when you look at the female Buddha is actually the pure element, and the male Buddha is actually the pure aggregate, the pure skanda. So each of these, when they transform, comes into this form, like you were asking me, Vyam, and here is the stuff, and they come in that form. They are the pure part of the element and the pure part of the aggregate. And the pure part of the negative emotion is the wisdom, what the wisdom is of that particular family. So these are the pure things that will happen to you when you die, and you will all be able to actually realize it. So let's go on with the earth family, okay, with the Ratna family. So the Buddha, the male Buddha, is called Ratna Sambhava, and the female Buddha is called Buddha Lochana. Doesn't really matter if you don't remember the names, it's not really important. And what is the wisdom of this way of reality? The wisdom is called the wisdom of equality, or the equalizing wisdom. Now, when you look at the equalizing wisdom, it is the most phenomenal thing, because the equalizing wisdom, and then I'm going to show you how it works in a relationship, but the equalizing wisdom means just what we were saying, what all of you were talking about. Everybody has Buddha nature. So everybody is equal. Even the ant, when I see an ant in trouble, I know that that ant is equal. That ant has the potential to have a Buddha nature. That cat that you were playing with, Sean, has a Buddha nature, an awakened nature. It's equal. Therefore, nobody is superior to anyone else. That would take away all the biases of gender, of race, of all the stuff would be gone if the wisdom of equality was in the world, because nobody would be superior to anyone. The only thing that you might be is you might be a king or a queen in this life. Therefore, you're going to serve your people. Another person might be a beggar, but all are equal. They're just on the wheel of life, doing a role over and over again. So the wisdom of equality is one of the most unbelievable wisdoms. Well, they all are. And the perversion, what's the perversion? Pride. Pride. When people are proud and they say, don't you dare do this to me. Don't you dare talk down to me. No, I won't clean toilets. I'm worth more. That is the perversion of the wisdom of equality. Because the wisdom of equality says, hey, buddy, you're just in a particular role in this life. And you might have a higher role, a lower role, more money, less money, more status, less status. But that's not the truth. The truth is that everybody is equal because they've all got Buddha nature, awakened nature. And the wisdom of equalizing is very important. And the enlightened activity of this Earth Ratna family is called increasing, enriching, and accommodating. And what is the meaning of that enlightened activity? The meaning is you're always adding to people. You're always increasing. You want the best for people. You want the wealth. If you are good at your job, you want your boss. If your boss was using the wisdom of equality, they'd say, you know what? Here's the circumstances for you to do your beautiful work. I'm opening it because you're always increasing, enriching, and accommodating. And perversion is pride. And the skanda that belongs to this family is feelings. All those feelings are transmuted. The minute you wake up to the Ratna family, the minute you wake up, the feelings dissolve because it's equal. And because there is no pride in actual fact. And because what you are doing in relationships, and I'm going to give you some of the details of that, what you are doing in relationships is you are trying to increase and accommodate and enrich whoever you're with. Such a beautiful thing. And you know, when you look at it, when people are of that earth sign, they say, I'm an earthy, down-to-earth person. Earth is the womb of life. The seeds grow. Imagination grows in the fertile earth of mind. And earth provides our food, our shelter, our wealth that sustains us. Now, a person of the Ratna family is always very hospitable, sometimes quite ostentatious, and sometimes they hoard and indulge. So what we're looking at here is, if we feel an affinity to that yellow way of reality, we are looking at trying to overcome, for example, obsessive compulsive tendencies. So when people want things to be exactly as they like it, then they have too much earth in them, too much earth, okay? They can't bear things anyway except what makes them feel comfortable and safe. And this is suffocating for any other people close to that person. So what we're learning to do is accommodate, not so much to get our way all the time. And even in office relationships, with anal bosses or colleagues or people smothering each other, earth can smother. Earth can want you to do everything the way they want to. And how do you help yourself? And how do you help a person close to you? By enriching, by accommodating, by saying things is, it would be so motivating for me if you trusted me to do this for you. Or don't worry, I know how much you like things to be, and I will certainly try and include all the things that make you happy. Imagine if you had a boss like that. You'd just go to work and you'd be so happy. Okay, because when you put the earth element over a couple, when you're doing this marriage, you are trying to work on ourselves with awareness. And we are differentiating in our own minds the difference between generosity and overbearing doing, because earth can be, can be really overbearing. Have some more, have this, do this, have this, and you could feel almost uncomfortable in that. You want to be more laid back and things like that. And pride, and the pride is the negative quality. We deliberately work to allow others their own way, and we build them up, instead of being disparaging and patronizing of them. So the Ratna family is the dual wish-fulfilling will, and the wisdom of equality helps us to see all beings as equal. As soon as you see beings as equal, you are there. As soon as you see somebody who feels very subservient to you, you bring them up, you accommodate, you increase them, you don't subjugate them as a lot of perverted people really do and push their own way. And also, what they do say is that earth people often have to be aware of eating disorders because they come a lot in those. And in relationships, they can be warm and generous, but also exact a price in return. Praise, loyalty, confirmation of their importance and grandeur. You know, they can insist on that. So that just gives you one way of reality. They're fine. What do you think? Let's do a little meditation. What do you feel about what I'm saying? As soon as you see yourself with the transcendent relationship, as soon as you see how you are, and you're not looking at this satisfies me, don't do this to me, this is me, you won't touch me. As soon as you give that up, and you go to a transcendent level where you have this beautiful earth element in your hands, and you can do so much for people. A lot to think about, and that's only one way. Anyone want to say anything? Comment, ask, let's do a meditation. Anyone? Yes, please, Sean.
Hello, everyone. Please excuse me if I come across ignorance. I'm very new to Buddhism, so yeah, just bear with me.
You've only been doing Buddhism for the last 50 incarnations. That you
Okay. My apologies. I just wanted to get back to what you were saying about ants and everything. So that to me comes across as the vegan lifestyle should be the lifestyle that Buddhists should be adhering to. We shouldn't be wearing animals, we shouldn't be eating animals, we shouldn't be killing animals, insects in our homes. Is that correct? Or
absolutely correct. But you know what? I've got to say this, that it's also very interesting when you see, because some of these masters are amazing. Like when Talopa, he would catch a fish and eat it. And then Naropa came along, he was a monk, and he said, how can you do this? And then Talopa said, okay. And he just regurgitated the fish and put it back into the water. You know, in other words, they had a way, even Patrul Rinpoche sometimes, he had a way of taking meat and transforming that animal that he was eating. So there were a whole lot of these masters eating meat, and the animal they ate was actually taken to a completely higher realm from their thing. We can't always tell, okay? But by and large, yes, that is absolutely right. We shouldn't be eating meat. We shouldn't be eating flesh. We shouldn't be eating all of these kind of things, you know, and that's why Buddhism...
As you said to me in one of our one-on-ones, like they could be our family from another... Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah.
They could be our family and everything, but the point is that sometimes, you know, with our inadequacies, our bones, our this, our that, I know that sometimes doctors recommend you need this or this or this to eat. So it's not always easy for everybody, and I don't ever judge it, okay?
Okay.
But I think in principle, it's...
But in principle, yeah, that's what I thought. Thank you.
Okay, Sean. Anyone else want to ask or say? Okay, well, let's just do a quick meditation, and then I think it's quite enough for tonight because it's a lot. But I just want you to close your eyes, or don't close your eyes, open them actually. And if you have a beautiful, pure space in front of you, just allow yourself to be totally present without holding on to anything. That's the best practice that we can do. No preconceived ideas, just a pure spaciousness in which all things can arise. And in your minds, I just want you tonight to almost imagine the multicolored brocade, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful rainbow light in the most vivid colors, which the whole world is really about. And I've got this beautiful prayer, which I'm going to read to you, which really would make you understand in the spaciousness of your life. And it goes like this. Comes from pure, boundless vision. Om Ah Hum. The external universe, the nature of space, is the realm of 5-colored light. Beautiful, vivid, 5-colored light. The inner content of sentient beings, that's us, are the 5 male and female families. Everything is the nature of the 5 wisdoms. It's all spontaneously present as the display of Samantabhadra. Samantabhadra is just another name for your pure nature. When your pure nature expresses itself in a pure way, it's all there. The beautiful colors, the beautiful wisdoms, the male and female beings with all their entourages, even the gatekeepers, the beings that keep everything pure. They're all in the mandala of your heart. So from today, I want you to just ponder how beautiful everything is within the mandala of your heart. Tigla Nachik, right in the center of your heart. And that when you die, and all the skandhas dissolve, form, feelings, perceptions, habits, consciousness, it all dissolves except the alaya consciousness. And all the poisons dissolve. Anger, passions, craving, attachment, delusions, they all dissolve. And the coarse elements of your body, all the skandhas dissolve. And you are left with the pure color, the pure realm of space in 5-colored light. And the 5 male and female Buddhas, and the nature of the 5 wisdoms spontaneously present right in front of you. Ponder this, meditate on it, and you'll find things start changing. And whenever you have a relationship in front of you that is really difficult and really something that you can hardly bear, think of it with gratitude. How beautiful it is to have this challenge and use one of the enlightened activities, increasing or magnetizing, which we'll talk about next time, or pacifying, when you really help someone to heal when they're going through pain, even though it may not be to your advantage. Pacifying, accomplishing action, and subjugating. Those enlightened qualities help us to see a relationship in its pure form and give a beautiful, beautiful everything to it. So there's a lot to learn, hey? Anybody quickly want to ask anything? There's a lot to learn, but I've been playing with these wisdoms for many, many, many years. And now they are clearly in my head, and I do the mantras every day so that I'm absolutely aware of it's you. This is who you are. And once you could touch it on a regular basis, you could change every single relationship you have. So funny how I always used to be, you know, judging people and things like that. And now I can really stand back and look at people and feel for them, even though they can't get it. I'm sad that people can often not get it. Like people who've got cancer, and they think if they talk about death, then it's going to come quicker. It's so sad, because why would you think it'd come quicker? Rather talk about it and get to know it and know what you're going to look for when you get there. Anyway, you all look tired now, and I'm sure it's more than enough. So unless anybody wants to ask me, I think you can all go to bed. So you've got a lot to think about, Da, hey? There's a lot. When you understand these 5 ways of wisdom, it's who you are. What a difference. When you're battling, slogging, doing this, doing that, doing the other, and you suddenly remember who you are. What a difference. Don't you think so, Jade? Yeah. Okay, well, let's dedicate for all people. I'll stay if anybody wants to ask me anything quickly. But we dedicate to all the people who are in the lowest ebb of their lives and who feel so unhappy and so persecuted and so in terrible circumstances. We really dedicate all these teachings that they will know that they can wake up to all these beautiful things that we have within us. And through this merit, may we achieve all-seeing Buddhahood, and thereafter, once all harmful enemies have been defeated, may all beings be liberated from the ocean of existence, stirred by the waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death. Sonam die tamche zipane topne nepe dranam tamshene jegana chi balak dropaye sipe sole duwadro warsho. So funny when you start seeing the